So the Rambam says that the sages saw from this. It's not just that they made a conscious decision to create rabbinic enactments on Shabbos. They saw that the Torah required them to make these enactments. The Torah is basically saying it's not sufficient to desist from the 39 malachas. We are also supposed to legislate other forms of stoppage. Mehen dvarim asarum mipneim shehem domim limlachot. Some of that which the sages prohibited is because they are similar to the prohibited labors. Umehen dvarim asarum gezerah shema yavo mehen isur skila. Others were prohibited lest one come to do something for which he would be liable to be stoned. That is a strict biblical prohibition. And then in the ensuing chapter, which I did not print for you, the Rambam brings, actually it's about 2 or 3 chapters, the Rambam brings many examples of rabbinic enactments. Don't do this on Shabbos. And every time he says, lest you come, he says you, Shema Yavo Lidei, or he will come to do X, Y, and Z in actual malacha. And sometimes he actually says, no, because it's like doing the malacha. And every one of them falls into one of those 2 categories. He goes right into the whole thing. Why don't you climb on trees? Because you might break off branches. Why don't you go swimming in a lake or across the river on Shabbos? Because you might make some sort of flotation device. You might come to do an actual malacha. And other things are prohibited because it looks like a malacha or similar, but it's not the exact malacha. In all these cases where there is a rabbinic enactment, don't do this, a person who willingly violates this, and he's been warned to, and they're witnesses, and they bring him to trial, he will not be put to death for desecrating Shabbos. And if he did it unwittingly, he will not have to bring a korban chataf to atone for it. However, the sages do have that at the disposal, disciplinary corporal punishment for someone who does such a thing, malkut mardut or makat mardut. When we go into the 24th parak, we see something else over here. Rambam says, Yesh devarim shein asurim b'Shabbat, af al pi shein andomim l'lacha, ve'inam mevi'in lidei melacha. And then there's that which the sages prohibited because it's not like a malacha, and you're not going to come to do a malacha if we would allow you to do this, but it's still prohibited. Why? Umipnei ma ne'esru. So why did the sages prohibited us? It doesn't fall into this category. It doesn't fall into that category. What's the reason? Mishum shnemar im tashiv b'Shabbat raglecha asod chefsacha b'yom chodshi. If you would desist, keep your legs from doing anything on Shabbos and doing what you want or doing what you seek on the Sabbath. This is not a verse from the Torah. This is taken from Yeshayahu. And those are familiar. Some people say this before they recite Kiddush on Shabbos morning, and others are familiar with it because it's part of the Haftarah of Yom Kippur in the morning. Now, Yom Kippur is the great Shabbos, and there he's talking about how you're supposed to keep the ideal type of Yom Kippur. What does God want? It's not just about starving yourself and then, okay, everything's better. It's about sincere repentance. When Ne'amar, it says you will honor the Sabbath. By what? You don't just do what your paths. You don't take a walk, go to work like you normally would. To find what you seek, and speaking matters. Speaking matters, yes. You're not supposed to speak on Shabbos like you do during the week. And this was taken quite literally in the olden days. From the time of the Vilna Gaon, there were families in, let's say, Eastern Europe, where they specifically only spoke Hebrew on Shabbos. And there's some they only spoke Hebrew all the time also. What kind of Hebrew did they speak? Not modern Hebrew, but what they knew, obviously. But the Vilna Gaon, it's attested, the Vilna Gaon, when he was with the people who knew him, only spoke his form of Hebrew. Right? There are letters about this. Vilna Gaon didn't. He knew how to speak Yiddish and Polish and Lithuanian, and he was forced to when he went out in the street, but he insisted, since his bar mitzvah, to only speak Hebrew. And Rav Kook also grew up like that. And among his family and with his playmates, he tried to only speak a form of Hebrew. Okay, and then there were the others who only did so on Shabbos. So you're not supposed to do these things. Lefichach asur ladam lehalech b'chafatzav b'Shabbat. Therefore, a person's not supposed to walk to do what he's trying to do. Chafatzav means his possessions and also his attempt to get more possessions, business. Or even to speak about them. Kigon shedaber im shutafo mayim kor lemachar. Oh, ma'ikneh. He's speaking to his partner in business. They're sitting at the Shabbos table. They're planning what are they going to buy or what are they going to sell tomorrow. Now, it's a big Yetzer Hara to do such a thing. They have a day off. So they're talking about on Sunday, though, we're going to get up, we're going to have a special sale on whatever it is that we sell, or maybe we're going to hop around and find a good way to get a good price on from our supplier on whatever it is. Oh, heach yivneh bayit zeh. He's discussing with the architect or the builder how they're going to build this house. Or they're deciding with what merchandise they're going to go to some other place to try to make a sale. Kol zeh v'chayotze bo asur. This and anything similar to it is prohibited. Shenemar midaber davar. Okay, one who would desist from speaking a matter. Dibur asur v'hirhur mutar, like they say in the song. Speaking about these matters is forbidden, but thinking about it, hirhurim, musing, that would be permissible. The Rambam continues a few halachas later. He gives an example of this. Mutar larutz b'Shabbat lidvar mitzvah. It is permissible on the Sabbath for one to run for a Devar mitzvah. What is a Devar mitzvah? Rambam gives an example. Kugon she'arutz leveit hakneset. He's running to Shachris in the morning. He wants to get to shul so he could run. What would be an example of running that he shouldn't do? Running for whatever other reason he has, or exercise. Rambam's going to say also, person wants to get a workout, which is always good because if he works out, he will be healthier. Still, you can't do that. Olavid midrash, he's running to the base medrash. Also, that's a devar mitzvah. Umachashvin cheshbonot shel mitzvah. He can start making calculations for mitzvah purposes. Umodidin midida shel mitzvah. Why is this important? You can measure what needs to be measured for a mitzvah. Measuring anything on Shabbos, prohibited or permissible? Well, there's no malacha in me taking out a ruler from my backpack and measuring the length of this sefer, for example. What they used to measure in Chazal's days, they didn't have as many things to measure as we did. They could measure length, and once you get length, you can measure area or volume. And they used to also measure weight, right? So they measured areas and volumes, lengths, and weight, usually speaking. And then they would calculate other things. Could they measure temperature back in the day? Could they measure time? Not the same way we can measure time, but then again, they couldn't take out a timepiece and start measuring time, right? They would measure time by looking at the stars. So usually that wasn't saying that they wouldn't time anything. They had an hourglass. Yeah. So that wasn't such a normal thing of a person take out an hourglass and start timing, seeing how long something happens. That wasn't usually done. Well, yeah, rabbi's speech, yeah. Okay, I get the hint, okay? But yeah, so that wasn't something they really measured in the olden days. Usually when we refer to measurements, we're referring to length, area, volume, and weight. Okay, the usual rabbinic measurements. But either way, what's the problem with measuring something? There's no malacha. Is measuring permissible on Shabbos or prohibited? And the answer is, earlier the Rambam wrote, you're not supposed to measure on Shabbos. Why would people measure things? To make notes. Okay, you'd mark down. Anytime you're measuring something, you're just measuring, let's say, the area of this room. Unless you're really good at memory, you are not going to remember, oh, I figured it out. I counted the balatas. Each one of these is 20 centimeters in length. Oh, actually, these are 30 centimeters, it looks like. So I could figure out how many meters. Like, I'm using the metric system. I've been living in this country too long and everything is standardized. So how many feet or how many yards it is across from one side to the other, but you're not going to remember that. You're going to come to write it down. So measuring was prohibited lest you come to write down, just like what? Certain buying and selling. If I gave you money for something and you give me, I'm going to buy a cup of coffee from you, technically speaking, there's no malacha involved as long as you didn't do any malacha to create that coffee, right? You made a cake, so I'm going to buy a birthday cake from you on Shabbos. What's wrong with purchasing things on Shabbos? Answer, sages prohibited it because usually purchases involve the creation of a record of the purchase. Nowadays, we have machines that do it. You just go somewhere, you scan your thing. You don't even have a credit card anymore. You have some sort of device on your phone, and it still creates a record, usually a printed record. So you have a machine that prints it, but it used to be in the olden days, you sell something, you write it down. So measuring and selling are prohibited on Shabbos, lest you come to write it down. But here the Rambam says measuring for a mitzvah purpose is still permitted. The sages never prohibited such thing. Question about that? Yeah.
So you got to say,
Well,
and there's a It's round about 10 square. You're not sure, right?
Okay.
Can you measure it?
If it's for a mitzvah purpose, yes.
It could be mean that you could actually walk out there and use the area because it's
Considered, yeah. So you measure it. And he gives the example of the mikvah. If you go in mikvah leida im yesh kashiur, person needs to dunk in the mikvah on Shabbos. The mikvah has to have 40 sa'ah. So you measure the mikvah. You want to know if this place is kosher, part of the Rosh Hashanah, if the mechitzas count. So that would be an example. Why do you need to know if this is a Rosh Hashanah? You need the space for davening. What it used to be, where they daven. Let's say shul is packed. I don't know what the shul is like on Shabbos, but I can imagine it gets a good crowd. In the olden days, I'll assume that if it's a fast day like Yom Kippur or it's Purim, and even the women are going to shul because women never go to shul as we discussed. So you got to daven outside. Okay, you daven outside to read the Megillah outside. So let's say for whatever reason we would also the overflow crowd here in the synagogue. They're going to take the Sidurim and the Sefer Torah right outside, and a teva. Teva meant the table upon which we read the Torah. So they want to bring it outside. It's Shabbos and Yom Kippur. If it's Shabbos and Yom Kippur, both days, you can't bring out into the public domain. So you would want to know, is this area halachically a private domain that's connected to the shul so I could bring stuff out? So that would be an example. And it would depend on the height of the walls surrounding this area, that if they're 10 tefachim or not. So that's a good example. Oh, beged le'dai makabel tuma. You have to know the size of this piece of cloth if it is susceptible to tuma or not. Nowadays, most people don't care if their begadim are susceptible or if they've contracted tuma. But really, there's a big nafkamina about that. Our clothing is technically, if you've been to a funeral indoors, or you've hovered over a grave, or you've come in contact with the mace, and you're wearing clothing that was non-synthetic, so that woven clothing is now impure. So you have a problem there. And if you would want to, let's say, visit the temple, actually go into the azar of the temple, or eat kachim, or even you're just a kohen, you want to keep things pure around your house, you would have to purify your clothing. Well, that's a real issue. But pieces of cloth that are not the minimum size, are not the 3 tefachim by 3 tefachim, or 3 etzbaot by 3 etzbaot, so they can't contract impurity. So some people have handkerchiefs still. Like I have one in my pocket right now. Is this? Well, that's a piece of paper. Is this handkerchief makabel tumor or not? It depends on its size. So that would be something we'd have to measure. Ufosakim stakal aniyim, and we also decide how much money the aniyim are supposed to get from the tzedakah fund. Normally, the gabbai tzedakah has a certain amount of money at his disposal, and he has to start, usually calculating. It'd be easiest if he could use pencil and paper. So a regular person who has to allocate funds should not be doing that on Shabbos. Why? Because he might come to actually just write a few things down. But the gabbai tzedakah has to give tzedakah to the aniyim, and even though whatever money they would give, the alms that they give to the pauper today, he's not going to have any use for them today because whatever he wants to purchase, no one's going to take that money from him because they also keep Shabbos. But even then, they could decide how to allocate the funds on Shabbos. We can go to the synagogues and to the study halls, and even to what's tartiot? Those are theaters and traklin shel goyim. V'vakeach al iskei rabim b'Shabbat, in order to supervise the communal needs on the Shabbos. Why would you go to the theater or the stadium, let's say Roman style, on Shabbos? Wow. Yeah. Finish him or not. Yeah, and they basically pull the crowd, and he gives a thumbs up or a thumbs down. It's depicted in even the most violent movies. So sometimes you can make an appeal that, sometimes it was a poor Jew that decided. He wasn't a trained gladiator, but they gave him a chance. They gave him a sword and a shield, and they put a tiger or a lion there, or just some other person, fight to the death. May the best man win, or just survive. So sometimes it was a way you could save someone by going to these things. Or here, it could just be to try to offer a bribe or some other thing, not even a physical bribe, but try to negotiate a bribe to these Roman higher-ups in order to save the Jews. So that would be something that's desirable on Shabbos. So a person could walk where he needs to walk to, even though if it's not Shabbos-dik to take such a walk. When do we have an example like this? I feel sorry. We mentioned that, I think it happened on Shabbos, right? The coronation of the current king of England was on Shabbos, right? So there were certain Jewish rabbinic higher-ups who were made to attend. Aside from the difficulty of them having to go to that church where they opened up the whole ceremony with their Shema Yisrael, which is already a problem. It's full of problems. But what are you going to do? They are stuck and they have headers to rely on. They have to rely on in order to maintain good relations. So they had the equivalent of the Ashkenazic chief rabbi and the Sephardic chief rabbi there. So they basically, went about their goings on Shabbos in a way that most other Jews wouldn't go. This is a once in a lifetime dispensation that they gave because they're Krovim L'Malchus, and there you go. But it should never. I pray that they never have to be forced into such a situation again. Okay. Well, it's not crazy. Yeah, if it was real pikuach, yeah, this Rabbim to try to talk to the Romans, offer them a bribe, on behalf of the Jews. Yeah, just keep things good. Rov Malchus. When Chief Rabbi Mervis went to the coronation, it wasn't pikuach nefesh. It was maintaining good relations with the Jewish community with the crown, right? And if the king had decided to do his coronation in some other place, he would have gone to that other place. It just nebuch that they had to do it in the biggest, grandest church that they happened to have. So that was an added. That was basically the icing on the tombstone for the whole event. Yeah. Let's continue. Shadechim ala tinoketh leares. Tinoketh doesn't mean baby in this case, although sometimes it means a young girl. The father arranges a shidduch for his daughter and has her betrothed. In the olden days, they would sometimes contract an arranged marriage very far in advance of the actual marriage, and while the prospective bride was still just a youngster. This is not unheard of. And even in Europe, they used to do these things. Like shortly after bar mitzvah, the parents would arrange a match for their daughter. Even if the wedding didn't go through for quite a few years, they would still already arrange it, and even kiddushin would happen. That means the father would receive the kesef kiddushin on behalf of his daughter quite early on. Last time I heard of something, an arranged marriage at such a young age, Rav Kapach had this done to him. Why? His wife was officially engaged to him, kiddushin, when she was very young. Why? To save him from being kidnapped by the Muslims. They had a rule for many hundreds of years in Muslim lands that if you have an orphan of any community, even the Jewish orphan, the Christian orphan, or the pagan orphan, it doesn't matter, the waqf, that is the trust, the official Muslim religious body, would adopt all the orphans and convert them to Islam. So Rav Kapach came from a line of great Yemenite rabbis in Sana'a, whatever you pronounce that city in Yemen. And his father died when Rav Kapach was young. And he was raised by his grandfather, who taught him also Torah. But the problem was, they knew that the Qadis and the Imams, or whatever else they call themselves, were coming to get him. They were going to take away Rav Kapach and Muslimatize him. So some other Muslims told them about this loophole that if the prospective orphan is already emancipated, considered an emancipated adult, he's married, and he's a balabas, so they don't come and take him away and force him into Islam. So Rav Kapach's grandfather arranged a wedding, a child marriage between Rav Kapach and his younger cousin. And they obviously they didn't go through with the wedding right then and there, but that's what happened. That's why Rav Kapach and his wife were together since they were teenagers. Okay, let's see here. It says, "Tinok ulamdo sefer ulamdo umanuth." Just like we have in the song, person can arrange on Shabbos melamed for his son. The tinok in this case means for the boy. You should have someone who could teach him book. What is lelamed sefer? We had this before. In biblical Hebrew, sefer means a number of things. Sometimes it means anything written. Sometimes it means a scroll, and sometimes it means literacy. Lelamed sefer means to teach literacy, to read and write. That's the meaning of the word when it's used in the book of Daniel, for example. It says that Nebuchadnezzar found some pretty prime young Jewish men who showed a lot of promise, and he taught them sefer. Don't translate that as book, ella, literacy. Right? And that's also why the modern Hebrew word for a school is not, Beit Limud or something like that, but Beit Sefer. It doesn't mean house of book. It means place of literacy. or the place where they teach literacy. At least two of the R's. Okay, let's continue. Or the lamda umanuth. It means to. In the olden days, you didn't go to college for something to learn, and instead, had you learn a craft or a trade, apprenticeship. A lamda umanuth means he goes to a craftsman who is going to teach him. Sometimes a father, he could have a trade or a craft, but maybe his son isn't cut out for it, or someone wants to learn something else, or he has a number of sons, and he can't teach every single one of them to be just like him. So he will contract with another man who has a different profession, and he will teach the son. What? Yeah, maybe it's better. Yeah.
Anybody in healthcare.
Yeah.
Usually have to apprentice.
Yeah. They still call it an internship, but it's basically they call it an internship. Yeah. The modern Hebrew word is stage. Yeah. What's the question?
You teach on Shabbos.
No, they're not teaching the trade on Shabbos. They're arranging that this boy will be sent to so and so to be his apprentice. Johnny Tremaine style. What was the question?
No. Exactly.
That's what they used to do. Yeah, there are many who have claimed in America. I think that they're correct about this. It's not everybody's cut out to get a liberal arts degree in college, and for many young men, a VOTech school, vocational technical school, would be much better. Teach them an actual craft like they used to. So in the olden days, a fellow who wanted to become really good at plumbing, for example, would just learn from another plumber. But nowadays they have plumbing schools. Yeah.
The bus said what you did. The front guy said, he's going to learn that installator.
Yeah, which means he's going to learn. Yeah, there's no official plumbing school. So you just have to apprentice yourself to a plumber and learn it. So yeah. But so in America, they're a little bit more organized. They have these VOTech schools, and that would be good for people. So that would be along these lines. Certainly before the modern era, before the Industrial Revolution, this is how you learn to do anything. Okay? You had an apprenticeship, and it's not just limited to, let's say, the Western world. So Chazal knew this. Vakrin cholin, umenachamim avilin. And also we do the mitzvahs of Bikur Cholim and Nichum Avilin. Okay, on Shabbos. Now the Shulchan Aruch it says what? Bikur Cholim. Nichum Avilin. So let's get into this. This is what we have to discuss now. The Shulchan Aruch brings that Bekoshi Hitiru. Now there was no that sounds like really it was forbidden, but somehow the sages found a way to permit it. It means you look at deeper. What the Shulchan Aruch is discussing is that the sages felt they should prohibit these actions on Shabbos. Why? There's no malacha. Yeah, but if a person were to, for example, look at the Shiva announcement, so and so had a funeral on Tuesday. He'll say, you know what? I'm busy Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Sunday, and Monday. The 6 days he's going to sit Shiva. I'm dafka going to wait until Shabbos in order to go pay a Shiva call. I'm dafka going to wait until Shabbos in order to check up on this fellow in the hospital. Some people live close enough to the hospital, so that's when they do it. The sages felt that many people would have that consideration. They didn't want someone to dafka wait until Shabbos to do so. But the sages realized, what are you going to do? Some people are actually in that situation. Many people work hard on during the week, and the Shiva house only has hours during daylight, whatever it is. So the sages left this open for Nichum Avelim on Shabbos. There's some notes here and some beautiful notes in this good Korean version over here. He mentions that there were Achronim who were a little bit uncomfortable with Nichum Avelim on Shabbos because of this, consideration. People are going to wait after until Shabbos. And like it gives, for example, the Aruch HaShulchan. It says here, let me read this to you. Shalochim l'achim b'meshach hashua v'rak b'Shabbos boim l'nachim. The Mishneh, for example, didn't like those people who specifically always wait for Shabbos. The Aruch HaShulchan, what does it say? Sha'minag shelo l'nachim avelim b'Shabbos. So that's the Aruch HaShulchan. You're not supposed to do nichum avelim on Shabbos. Now, I like to point out that this is actually quite a rare thing. You don't see people go to the Shiva house on a Shabbos afternoon, especially during the summer. Normally, if it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon at Shiva house, people are going. But 5 o'clock in the afternoon on Shabbos, 2 hours before Mincha, whatever it may be, rarely anybody's going. Really, we don't hold that way. At least for people, I don't know what, let's say, the minhag in other Western countries is, because I never lived there. I don't know what a British sitter looks like. But I do know what I've seen in Young Israel's around America and what's mentioned in the American Sidurim, which is we certainly hold that Nichum Avelim is performed on Shabbos. What's the proof to such a thing? Anybody know? I mentioned it's in the Siddur. The answer is that an American minhag, which I haven't seen here in Israel, hanging out with too many Israelis in Sparta. What did we used to do in America? We had Mincha on Erev Shabbos, and then Kabbalah Shabbos. And Kabbalah Shabbos is like it's been for the last 300 years or so. A bunch of Mizmorim, and then a piyut called L'chadodi. And then we'll say Mizmor Shili Yom HaShabbos. They do that here. Okay, it's a Western influence. Now, it used to be Kabbalah Shabbos was like the Shulchan Aruch says, Baruch Hu and Mariv. That's what you said an hour ago. That's how you accept Shabbos. And there's an old ancient practice from the times of Gonim before Baruch Hu, Mizmor Shili Yom HaShabbos. That's also halachically that's allowed as not just Baruch Hu or Mariv. That's also the acceptance of Shabbos. And then in later Kabbalistic times, last few hundred years, they added other Mizmorim. And by the way, not everybody says the same Mizmorim. Minhag Yerushalmi of Spartam is just Mizmor LeDavid, and that's it. And a different version of L'chadodi. L'chadodi, it's kind of hard. Before Rabbi Shlomo Alkabetz wrote the piyut L'chadodi, how did they sing L'chadodi? So it's difficult. It's Baruch Hashem, he wrote the piyut. Now we have something to sing, So that used to not be there. The American minhag is after the sing-along and before Mizmor Shili Yom HaShabbos, which is the official acceptance of the Shabbos, what do? We open the door. The Avel who had been around for Mincha, you notice he slipped out. And officially, that's when everybody is supposed to comfort him. Now, of course, sometimes just they open the door, they say, Nichum Avelim, and everybody just recites a line. They don't even look at the guy. He just walks in and nobody pays attention. It's a strange formality. So I remember, I forget which Rav it was in New Jersey, who actually made this a serious deal. He had a klop. We're going to have Nichum Avelim, and he went to the door and held the fellow's arm and brought him in and had a whole actual thing, let people go and shake his hand and say what they're supposed to say. That's the way we do it. But either way, officially, this is part of our right. That is Nichum Avelim. It's done in the synagogue. It's in the sitters, yeah. It's in the sitters. So if you can perform the act of Nichum Avelim, you can go comfort mourners on Shabbos in the synagogue. You could also do in the house. I know there's societal things, people think it's wrong, but anytime someone tells me you're not supposed to do Nichum Avelim Shabbos, we don't do that. I'm not going to a Shiva house on Shabbos, just to know, last night you did it in the synagogue. Okay? So there's no, well, it was Shabbos. Yes, it's the act of accepting Shabbos. They just said L'chadodi. They just L'chadodi. Yeah, unless nowadays they tell you, if you say Likra Shabbos, it's Shabbos, welcome Shabbos. They're saying, yeah, there are some people who are clever. Usually someone who's learning in YU will tell you, if you had negative da'as, he said, I'm not going to accept Shabbos because I actually have to do some more malacha. I'm just doing the sing-along. Yeah, but most people, when they do that, they're wholeheartedly accepting Shabbos. Why do they do that, by the way? If they're mimicking the sages used to go out, right? Let's go greet the Sabbath queen. That's the way we used to do it. We have a question? So that's the way the Gaonim used to do it. Saying now, so if you all have, like I just said, if you have negative da'as, then in Achinami, your Nichum Avelim is right before Shabbos. But for many people, they l'chadodid, and sometimes, by the way, that's assuming it's before sunset. If for whatever reason, like I remember where I grew up, there was no nafkamina. Why? Mincha was 10 minutes before sunset. By the time they get to that part of l'chadodi, if it's not the summer, I'm saying mincha in most days. If it wasn't specifically an early Shabbos minyan, when this fellow walked into shul, it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It's 5 o'clock in the evening in New York in December. It's dark out. Okay, so when they did this act, they did it on Shabbos. Okay, so yeah. By the way, everything we just said now, Kabbalah Shabbos, starting with the Chuna Ranana, is technically an acceptance of Shabbos. But if it's already after sunset, Shabbos happened. Okay, you're just singing now. Hold on, a question just came in. We get it. There's an actual question? No. Okay. Let's continue. Yeah, if you have a question there, please.
So, but in the base of it on Shabbos, he's not in the chair. He's not no hay available.
Technically speaking, he is a little bit. Well, he doesn't do things in public to show that he's an Avil. But he still needs, the emotional support. That's what Nichum Avelim is.
Is that available behavior? In
so when it says Noheg Befarhesya, by the way, in Sinah, he is an Avil. So he goes to shul like everybody else. But it doesn't mean that you can't comfort him. Okay? Yeah, he's not supposed to cry on Shabbos. There are stories about certain real strong personalities who even resisted the natural pain of a loved one passing on Shabbos. To them, everything was fine. Then Shabbos ended, and then they burst out crying. Right? Yeah, they're not. That's a strong person. Doesn't mean you can't do nichum avelim. Can't mean you can't give words of encouragement. Okay, very important. Nichum avelim. There is the aspect of doing it for the other, but there's also the aspect of doing it for yourself. A lot of the mitzvahs that we do, it's about improving your character. Okay, a lot of times tzedakah. Sometimes Baruch Hashem, you have a person. He's the one pauper in a very wealthy neighborhood. What's everybody going to help him? They're already well. Everybody's well off. He's actually not a pauper by objective standards. But it's very important. Rabbi Broid wrote this to someone. It says you need someone to receive the tzedakah. Otherwise, people will not learn to be charitable. So too, part of the aspect of nichum avelim is to inculcate certain perspectives and also certain feelings in the person who's doing this. Bikur cholim also. I think even kal v'chomer, the sick person needs the bikur cholim on Shabbos. It's good for him. It helps him. Can't say, well, it's Shabbos, so I'm not going to. It's refuah. I'm not going to. It's not Shabbos that I should go visit him. Dafka could be some of these people. They end up on Shabbos. They feel even more lonely. So those people suffer from loneliness. It's a good thing if people don't forget them on Shabbos. And Bikur cholim we still do on Shabbos, by the way. No one in the hospitals here. There's actually more Bikur cholim going on Shabbos than during the weekday. At least the committees and the organizations that do Bikur cholim. So that's a very good thing. They're following the Rambam in this case. Bikur cholim is a mitzvah on Shabbos. Okay. V'anichnas levaker hacholeh omer Shabbat hi milizok u'refuah krova lavo. He should say you shouldn't cry out on Shabbos. A refuah is soon to come. Why the Rambam mentioned this? Maybe we should say that all week long. The answer is during the week you're supposed to beseech God, okay, like a tachanun. But the Rambam holds very straight. Shabbos and Yontif, no tachanun unless it's Yom Kippur. You're not supposed to beseech God for personal needs. That's why, for example, even though our daily Shmona Esrei 3 times a day we request of God, Rifa'inu Hashem v'nei Rafeh, Hoshi'inu v'nei Vasheah, okay, cure our invalids. On Shabbos, we do not say that. It's not even proper. General requests for healing are not proper on Shabbos. So next to the fellow who's laid up in bed because I don't know whatever's ailing him, it's proper to tell him, we're praying for you. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should send you or a frush leim b'meir ameinu b'soch chulei Yisrael. But in this case, it's improper to say such a supplication on Shabbos. You just tell him something encouraging. He continues. Hold on. Umachshichim al tchum lefakeach al iskei kala v'al iskei amet lavilo aron v'tachrichim. What's machshichim al tchum? That means wait for it to get dark. Okay, wait at the edge of the tchum. Most people, we don't experience this nowadays because we live in such large cities. And even if we didn't live in a large city, we wouldn't need the head start of going right to the edge of tchum Shabbos in order to be able to get going right when Shabbos ends. Machshichim means wait until it gets dark. Someone asked this week, a very good question. The Rambam basically saying, the way Rambam applies, when he says machshich, he means until sunset. You're waiting for sunset. But I thought Shabbos, according to Rambam, ends when the stars come out. The Rambam says very clearly, Shabbos is over when the stars come out. You have to be machmir. It's Shabbos. So why is he using a verb that he meant wait until sunset? The answer is a technical answer that maybe we won't have time to get into. I'll say it outside right now. The Rambam says there's 2 techumin on Shabbos. There's a techum deoraisa, which is quite far. Beyond town, you have quite a few parsaot. Okay? But the sages said, we're going to limit your techum to 2,000 amoth. Okay? 2,000 cubits, which is basically about 1,000 meters, a kilometer from the edge of your town. So find where the edge of town, where the houses end, or where the wall is. You can only go midrabanan a kilometer beyond that by foot. But really, deoraisa, you would be able to go a little bit farther, or quite a lot farther. So you're more limited. So when the Rambam says, wait at the edge of the tchum for the sun to set, a verb like waiting for it to get dark, it's because once the sun sets, the rabbinic prohibition of tchum disappears, and only the deoraisa prohibition still exists. The Rambam says, we're going to see this I posted here. He says here in Halacha Yud, the next page, Kol hadvarim she'en asurim mishum shavot. All of that which the sages prohibited because of desist, all these extra rabbinic layers, lo gazru alehen ben hashmashot. They made no enactment ben hashmashot. Ben hashmashot occurs twice on Shabbos, at the beginning and at the end. So we have examples from the Mishnah, things that the sages prohibited on Shabbos, but they did not prohibit on Ben Hashmashot. So the rabbinic limit, the rabbinic boundary that exists on Shabbos ceases to exist Ben Hashmashot. So that's what he's saying here. So for Iskei Kala, what's Iskei Kala here? If you read it with the word Iskei, so that knocks the dot out of the cuff, what does the Kala need? So there's a mitzvah to help arrange weddings for those people who have difficulty doing it, usually for financial reasons. Sometimes you're dealing with a young lady who has no parents. So who's going to make the wedding for her? So we call that hachnasat kala. Sometimes, in order to make sure that the wedding happens properly on Sunday, this atzkan, the person who's involved in the mitzvah, finds it that he needs a head start at the end of Shabbos. He wants to be all the way at the edge of the tchum as far as he can get because he's going to have to travel right after Shabbos in order to get what he needs. So on behalf of the Kala, this would be important. Nowadays, like I said, it never really comes up. You don't have people who are waiting at the edge of the tchum for Shabbos to end because they're just waiting for Shabbos to end. They're going to get in their automobile or the bus as it may be, and they're driving much farther anyways than necessary. So they don't have to wait at the edge there. Okay. Continues. They need to have a funeral. In the olden days, you couldn't really delay funerals. You had to bury people quickly. So in order to get shrouds and a casket, also, a person's going to find himself at the very edge of his Shabbos boundary towards the end of Shabbos. Normally, if a person were to do this just for his own businesses, his own purposes, it would be prohibited. But in this case, because pressing need for those who need help, remember, chesed for the mace is chesed shalamis. He really can't help himself, so that'd be permitted. We still have time, or you have to give me the yank. Well, okay, just give me the signal, okay? Or start screaming. V'omer lo leich l'makom ploni. Hold on one second. Lo matzat hasham havei m'makom ploni. Whoever's arranging this can tell the fellow who's actually the messenger, says, go to so-and-so place, and if you don't find there, go get from some other place. Lo matzata b'maneh havei b'matayim. You don't find it for 100 zuz, so spend twice as much for 200. Uvuvad shelo yizkor lo schum mikach. As long as he doesn't actually say how much he's supposed to pay the final amount. By the way, also there's a mistake in this printing over here. It spells the word mekach with a segol as though there's an actual word with a shoresh mem kuf chet. There is no such word in Hebrew, mekach. And that's we grew up in yeshiva. There's no word mekach in Hebrew. Mekach, that would mean that word is its own shoresh, like the word kesef or bayit, or I don't know, give another example, a shevet even, a shevet, something like that, a segulet noun. Mekach is not a segulet noun. The mem is not part of the shoresh. It's supposed to be milkach. Like the word lekach means a lesson. Milkach would be something that you took in acquisition. And because there's a lamed there in the shoresh, preceded by a mem prefix, the lamed just drops off, and you put a dagesh in the kuf. It should be mikach, and not mil'el. It's milra. It's mikach. Okay. So aside from that, they got it right. Aside from making it mil'el and leaving out the dagesh and putting the wrong vowel under the mem, they got the word right. But really, you have to put a chirik under the mem and a dagesh in the kuf and a kamatz under the kuf and not a patach. And the accent is on the second syllable because it's not a segulet noun. It's a noun of mishkal, mif'al. Okay, mishkal is the way we create Hebrew words. So the mem is not part of the shorsh. Whatever it is, it's they have to correct it. I think Makbili got it right, but Koren got it wrong. Shekol elu v'chayotzi bahen mitzvahin. All these examples that the Rambam gave here, which involved helping the poor, taking care of the dead, nichum avelim, etc. Bikur cholim. Shekol elu v'chayotzi bahen mitzvahin. These are all commandments of the Torah. V'ne'amar asot chafasecha. That which the Navi wanted people to desist from on Shabbos was chafatsecha, that which you want to do. Okay, this is for Hashem. Chafatsecha asurim, that which you want to do, that's prohibited. Cheftzei shamayim muturim. That which heaven wants you to do, that's permissible. And that's what the sages want. So I think we should conclude with the last halach over here in Zion. Eino nashim b'Shabbat. Okay? Beis Din doesn't punish anybody on Shabbos. Yes, there are people who deserve to be punished. And they derive this, interestingly enough, from the pasuk, Lo teva'aru eish b'chol moshavotechem b'yom HaShabbat. This is a great pasuk because we know about the malachas. We heard about charish and katzir and not making fires. Chazal have a long idea, which we saw elsewhere. Lo teva'aru eish, that's just one malacha. What does it come and teach us? That there's a chiluk malachos. And there's many different ways to do different malachas and how you're actually going to be counted in Beis Din or in heaven, how many malachas you've violated. But one of the other things they learned here is that you can't inflict the punishment of srifah. Some people, they violate certain sins, the Beis Din is supposed to burn them to death. Not literally burning them, but whatever it is. But they learn from this, just like Beis Din is not supposed to inflict that particular punishment, Beis Din is not supposed to inflict any other punishment, including malchus, on Shabbos. It's an azhara for Beis Din. And Kal V'chomer, they learn Bali Musar, and Rambam brings this in other places. Certainly, one who allows himself to get angry and do something about it, that's a sin. It's like he's worshiping Avodah Zarah. But on Shabbos, it's even worse. Not only is it Avodah Zarah, it's like he's setting a fire. Okay, even Amei Aretz, Rabbi Victor Miller writes about this. Even Amei Aretz knew Lo Savar Reish B'Chol Moshe V'Zachem. Don't get worked up on Shabbos. Being angry on Shabbos is the worst thing you could do. Okay, we should all be zocheh one day. Keep a proper Shabbos. Questions until this point? No? Okay. Okay. Have a good one, everybody.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.